Hello, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Things Written. Today we continue our historical series. The light gets brighter and brighter until you can't see. A year by year history of Jehovah's Witnesses. Part 2, a great deal more chronology. In Part 1, William Miller built his master calculation. Daniel's 2300 days became 2300 years. Daniel 9 supplied the starting point, and 1843 appeared at the end of the line. Now we turn to the rest of Miller's system. If the 2300 days were the master clock, Miller was not content to leave the wall otherwise bare. The 7 times, Daniel's additional prophetic periods, the number 666, and even institutions and politics of Miller's own century would all be recruited to tell the same time. You do not have to memorize every cog. The point is to watch the same method repeat. The difficulty is not that one prophetic clock is impossible to understand. It is that Miller kept adding clocks until disagreement began to look like a scheduling problem. The Midnight Cry shows that this wall of clocks was not merely a critic's caricature. In January 1844, under the heading Prophetic Time, it listed the 6,000 years from creation, the 7 times, the Great Jubilee, Daniel's 2300 days, Daniel's 1335 days, all terminating about 1843. The movement itself presented the clocks as converging evidence. The Midnight Cry, Volume 6. By January 1844, the movement itself was publishing photographs of the wall. That list shows the method in mature public form, not one calculation nervously standing alone, but a wall of prophetic clocks chiming the same hour. The listener's job is not to pass a Millerite arithmetic exam. It is to hear the rhythm, calculate, corroborate, repeat. 7 times Leviticus becomes 2,520 years. Of course, that number becomes important to Jehovah's Witnesses. A second line appeared to confirm 1843. In Leviticus 26, Israel is repeatedly warned that continual disobedience will bring punishment 7 times. Leviticus 26:18, if ever this does not make you listen to me, I will have to chastise you 7 times as much for your sins. Leviticus 26:33-34, if in spite of these things you do not accept my correction and you insist on walking in opposition to me, and I too will walk in opposition to you, and I myself will strike you 7 times for your sins. Miller connected those warnings with Nebuchadnezzar's 7 times in Daniel 4. Daniel 4:16. Let its heart be changed from that of a human, and let it be given a heart of a beast, and let 7 times pass over it. Nebuchadnezzar's humiliation was history and a pattern, Miller argued. Leviticus was prophecy. Therefore, the latter required 7 prophetic times. A prophetic year was taken as 360 days, supported by Revelation's equivalence between 42 months and 1,260 days. Revelation 11:2 and 3. They will trample the holy city underfoot for 42 months. I will cause my 2 witnesses to prophesy for 1,260 days in sackcloth. Let's do the math. 42 months times 30 days equals 1,260 days. Time equals 360 days. 7 times 360 equals 2,520 prophetic days. Year by year principle, 2,520 literal years. This being a prophecy will be fulfilled only in 7 prophetic times, which will be 7 times 360 years, which will be 2,520 years. Miller quote in the exposition. But a 2,520 year period still needed a beginning. Here the reverse engineering becomes visible. The master calculation had already produced 1843. Miller therefore counted backwards. 2,520 years minus 1843. We get 677 BCE. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? After obtaining 670 BCE, Miller did what he would do many times and what history would need to name. He went shopping. The date was already decided. History was the store. His task was to find an event in stock, approximately the right size, that could be brought home and display as the reason for the fixed date. Call it a shopping trip. For this trip, Miller came home with the captivity of King Manasseh. 2 Chronicles 33, 10-13. Jehovah kept speaking to Manasseh and his people, but they paid no attention. Jehovah brought upon them the army chiefs of the king of Assyria, and they captured Manasseh with the hooks and bound him with 2 copper fetters and took him to Babylon. He kept praying to him, and he was restored to Jerusalem to his kingship. Then Manasseh came to know that Jehovah is the true God. Also, Jeremiah 15:4 says, I will make them an object of horror to all the kingdoms of the earth because of Manasseh, the sons of Hezekiah, the king of Judah, for what he did to Jerusalem. Take 677, which were before Christ, from 2,520 years, and the remainder will be 1843 after Christ. Miller quote. Look at how that nicely lines up. The second calculation now appears to confirm the first, but 677 had not independently led to 1843. It had been produced by subtracting 1843 from 2,520. That weakness was visible at the time. The starting event was doing less historical work than the arithmetic required. Reverse the arithmetic, and the answer returns home looking surprisingly well-traveled. By the time Millerism was in full public circulation, the 7 times were not speculative side road. They were part of the public case that the end was due about 1843. The audience was not asked to trust one fragile bridge. It was shown several bridges leading to the same shore. The reported 7 times in Leviticus also reads naturally as intensified punishment within covenant curses. Miller turned the phrase into one hidden period, Daniel 4 to define it, Revelation to give him a time 360 days, and Numbers and Ezekiel to turn it into years. By the end, 4 separate passages were explaining what Leviticus had neglected to say. Leviticus, apparently, had not been run off paperwork. Clock number 2, chiming, 1843. From Miller's 7 times to the Gentile times. This calculation is essential to Watchtower history. Miller's 2,520 years did not yet run from 606 BCE to 1914. His period ran from 677 BCE to 1843. But the machine had been assembled. Luke 21:24, Jerusalem will be trampled on by the nations until the appointed times of the nations are fulfilled. Nelson Barber would later identify Miller's 7 times with Jesus' times of the Gentiles, replace Manasseh's captivity with the Babylonian overthrow of Jerusalem, and carry the same 2,520 years forward to 1914. Russell would inherit Barber's recalculation and publish it as part of present truth. Thus, the Watchtower's most famous date did not emerge from Luke 21 supplying a number. Luke supplies no number at all. The number came from Miller's treatment of Leviticus, Daniel, Revelation, Numbers, and Ezekiel, a treatment already publicly challenged before Russell was born. Luke supplied the phrase, Leviticus, Daniel, Revelation, Numbers, and Ezekiel supplied the number. It was less a proof text than a small committee. Daniel 1,260, 1,290, and 1,335 days. Miller next arranged 3 periods from Daniel 12 around 2 dates already important to the system, 1798 and 1843. Daniel 12:7, it was for an appointed time, an appointed times, and a half a time. As soon as the dashing to pieces of the power of the holy people comes to an end, all these things will come to the finish. Daniel 12:11 and 12. From the time that the constant feature has been removed and the disgusting thing that causes desolation has been put in its place, there will be 1,290 days. Happy is the one who keeps in expectation, who arrives at the 1,335 days. Don't fall asleep. Here is the picture to hold while numbers go by. Miller now has 3 ropes of different length, one 1260, 1290, and 1335. He has 2 posts already planted in the ground. 1798, the year French troops arrested the Pope, and 1843, the year everything is required to end. His task is to tie the ropes to the posts. But the ropes are the wrong lengths to all starting together. So Miller does not move the post. He moves the starting knots. sliding each rope beginning backward to forward through history until the far end lands where it must. At times and a half at times, becomes 3.5 prophetic years. At 360 days per prophetic year, that produces 1260 days, and there 1260 literal years. Miller connected the period with Daniel 7 and the parallels period in Revelation, Daniel 7:25. He will speak words against the Most High, and he will continue to harass the holy ones of the Supreme One, and he will intend to change times and laws, and they will be given into his hand for times, and half a time. Revelation 12:6. The woman fled into the wilderness where she had placed prepared by God, where they feed her for 1260 days. In Revelation 13:5, it was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemy, and it was given authority to act 42 months. Like many Protestants of his age, Miller applied the 1260 years to papal domination. He placed the termination in 1798 when French forces took Pope Pius VI prisoner. From that endpoint, he calculated backward to 538. Then, 1260-year rope tied at 538 reaches at the Pope's arrest in 1798. The 1290-year rope is 30 years longer, so its knot slid 30 years earlier to 508, and it too reaches 1798. And the 1335-year rope, tied at the same 508, runs 45 years past the Pope's arrest and arrive once again at the end of the world. So we got 538 plus 1260, that's 1798. 508 plus 1290, 1798. 508 plus 1335, it's 1843. 1335 minus 1290 equals 45. 1798 plus 45 equals 1843. Miller describes Daniel begin with the resurrection in 1843 and reckon back. The phrase is the method in miniature. The end point is not really the result of the calculation. It's the starting point instruction. With 1843 subtract 1335, and history is now expected to provide something useful in 508 and 538. So what do you think? Do you think he's going to find something useful? Well, for 538, Miller appealed to the age of Emperor Justinian and his code of Roman law. He claimed that the code supplied the papacy with authority over kings and heretics and therefore marked the rise of papal power. The historical details can be argued from several directions. The larger methodological problem is harder to escape. Miller needed 538 because 1260 years before 1798 equals 538. He needed 508 because 1290 years before 1798 and 1335 years before 1843 equals 508. History then searches for events close enough to make the arithmetic appear prophetic. The periods themselves shift according to what the endpoint requires. One might naturally expect the 1260, 1290 to begin together and end 30 years apart. Miller makes them begin 30 years apart so they can end together in 1798. The 1335 then inherits the chosen 508 beginning and reaches 1843. The number 666 becomes an historical period. Miller then recruited one of the Bible's most famous numbers, Revelation 13:18. This is where it calls for wisdom. Let the one who has insight calculate the number of the wild beast, for it's a man's number, and its number is 666. The verse speaks of a number of a beast, of a man's name. Miller treated 666 as a duration of pagan Rome, power. 666 provided days and therefore 660 years. What a genius, eh? Miller's system had already made a promise elsewhere. Pagan Rome had to disappear in 508 because 508 was there when the 1290-year rope was tied. So if 660 years was the lifespan of pagan Rome, then arithmetic was already spoken for. Subtract. Pagan Rome was required to have begun around 158 years before Christ. 666 years, proposed duration of pagan Rome, minus 508, required ending, 158 BCE, required beginning. Notice what has happened. Miller is not asking history when Rome rose. He is telling history when Rome is needed. Now comes the shopping trip. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 158 BCE, there must be something Roman on the shelf. And there is. There always is. A treaty of friendship between Rome and Jewish rebels of the Maccabean revolt, preserved in the books of Maccabees. Miller purchased it, brought it home, and displayed it at the moment pagan Rome's 666 years began. This power of pagan Rome would be taken when his 660 prophetic days should end, and brings us to show when these days began and, of course, when they ended. This is a Miller quote. The 666 calculation expresses the system in miniature. First, 508 is required by another calculation. Second, 508 is subtracted from 666. Third, history is searching for something in Rome near 158 BCE. Finally, the discover event is displayed as confirmation of the original interpretation. The conclusion manufactures its own evidence and then seems pleasantly surprised to find it. The arithmetic had gone looking for history, and with admirable determination found something approximately the right size. Clock number 6, purchased secondhand from the Maccabees. But now, the pattern has full toolkit, reckon back from the ending. Take a shopping trip from the beginning and arrange a backstage introduction so the results can testify as independent witnesses. Hold on to that phrase, independent witnesses. Barbara will use every tool in the kit and he will simply shop at different stores. The numerical periods were only part of Miller's case. Once he believed the final years had arrived, the religious and political world around him became a running commentary on prophecy. Laodicea, 1799, 1798, and 1843. Miller read the 7 congregations of Revelation 2 and 3 as 7 successive eras of Christian history. The last, the Laodicean, represented church immediately before judgment. Revelation 3, 15 and 16. I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish you were cold or else hot. So because you are lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I'm going to vomit you out of my mouth. He says, this Laodicean church began around 1798 and will last 45 years. When this dispensation will close, the judgment will set, and the books will be open. This is a Miller quote. There is the same 45-year interval again, 1798 to 1843. Revelation provides neither day. They are important from the 1290 and 1335 calculations. And the message to the ancient congregation becomes another witness to a conclusion already reached. Clock number 7. This one built entirely from imported parts. The 10 virgins. Miller also interpreted the Jesus parable of the 10 virgins as a prophecy of 19th century religious activity. Matthew 25, 6 and 7. Right in the middle of the night, there was a loud shout, "Here's the bridegroom, go out to meet him." And all the virgins got up and put their lamps in order. The trimming of the lamps became Bible translations, missionary organizations, Sabbath schools, Bible classes, tract societies, and temperance campaigns. He says, what of Bible societies? Are not these trimming the lamps of millions of human beings? Miller quote. Again, the tract societies of much use and are an efficient means to help trim the lamps. Like snuffers that take away the preventions to the light, so are the tracts. Miller quote. Another Miller quote. Perhaps this temperance society is the virgin's last resort. The judge stands at the door. Go ye to meet him. Another Miller quote. The parable itself says nothing about Bible societies, tract societies, temperance organizations, or date. But once the interpreter is certain that he occupies the final generation, ordinary features of his own age become the predicted lamp trimming. Present is used to decode the Bible, and the decoded Bible then certifies the present. The 10 virgins had begun with oils lamped and ended with 19th century mailing department. The tension is obvious enough without calling another witness. Miller described the same era as the dreadful lukewarm state of Laodicea, and it's an extraordinary age of Bible distribution, missions, and religious activity. The age was simultaneously proof of spiritual decline and prophetic awakening. Conveniently, both conditions pointed to 1843. Wars, truces, conspiracies, and royal marriages. The same habit appeared in Miller's handling of public events. Once the final crisis is believed to be at the door, every turn of affairs, a war, a a truce, a conspiracy, even a royal marriage can become the immediate precursor of the New Age. This is one of the recurring habits as we will trace throughout the series. The prophecy is treated as proven because the newspapers look turbulent. If the war ends, the truce becomes significant. If the expected empire survives, its survival becomes temporary fulfillment on the way to its full. The news can never falsify the timetable because every kind of news can be recruited. A war proves urgency, a truce proves the calm before the storm. Properly arranged, prophecy never has to take a day off. It is, in this respect, the most durable interpretive system ever devised. Cannot be falsified by events, could employ all of them. A failed forecast before the Great Disappointment. Even before the Great Disappointment, Miller had already moved a smaller expectation. He expected the overthrow of the Turkish Empire and severe persecution of Christians in 1839. When the year passed, the expectation shifted to 1840. That is the repair mechanism before the largest collision. The Great Disappointment did not invent chronological adjustment. It merely gave the procedure a much larger patient. Seen beside the Midnight Cry's own list of converging periods, the danger becomes sharper. The problem was not only that one date might fail, the problem was that a whole interpretive machine had been built to keep producing confirmation. Once the machine existed, a mistake could be treated as a calibration problem rather than falsification. Coming up in part 3. By now, Miller had not one prophetic clock, but a wall of them. The 7 times, Daniel's additional periods, 666, Laodicea, the 10 virgins, and current events all seem to point toward the same ending. And the practical danger had already appeared. When a smaller forecast failed, the date could simply be adjusted and the system carried on. Part 3. This private calculation becomes a mass movement. We will see what believing the date did to people's futures, how about 1843 narrowed to October 22nd, 1844, and how a visible failure becomes an invisible success. Chronology is about to discover airbags.